And now we are extremely, extremely grateful as well to have Engy Kheirallh and Raneem Welily join us, please. Come and join us. And I'm also going to welcome Zina. So Zina Woolridge is also going to join us. Please go ahead, you take a seat. We're all family here. It's all squash family. And so Zina is also going to join us for this conversation. And this is very relevant because we didn't have the conversation about women trailblazers, and we're missing Amna, but we already heard from our Amna this morning with the company of Dr. Sobi. But we want to use this panel because this women right here are really trailblazers in what female Egyptian squash is now. So they were part of the team in 2008 that won the first world team that Egyptian women won, which was truly where a lot of these, you paved the way for the next generation of players. So to talk about trailblazers is having you here, and obviously Raneem has just been inducted to the Hall of Fame, so please, a massive round of applause for Raneem. So truly an honor to be surrounded by all these amazing women, and I'm going to join the panel just to help collaborate on the conversation with Rowena as well and Zina as part of having women leaders in squash. So not just women players leading the way, but also women leaders in leadership positions, coaches in the commercial side, and obviously I'm in the PSA, so from the professional side and the charitable side. So we hope that we make the most of this conversation. So let's have a conversation. So Rowena, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, do you want to start with Trailblazers piece first? Well, why don't you kick that off?
Okay. All right. So I think one of the main things that in terms of women trailblazers, if we go back to the 90s, there was a really, really influential figure that was a trailblazer for her time, a visionary in the 90s. And she really helped shape the future of squash for females in Egypt, Dr. Samita. So can you maybe tell us a little bit about what it was that she did in the 90s? You hear me? Yes. And what did that mean? What did she do? She was a member of the Egyptian Squash Federation. Who was she and what did she do?
Well, Dr. Samiha was like a mother, a mentor to all of us, and she really believed in women's squash. And it started with, I think, a team in '93. She really believed in them, and she believed that women need to be more present in squash. And so she sent a team, and she was their mentor. And after that, in '99, I was a member of the team that won the first women junior championship in Antwerp, with Omnaya Abdelawi, Iman Amir, and Nisreen Nashat. And she gave us the opportunity to train, and she brought international players to come and play with us, sent us on camps, and helped us get funding and play tournaments. And she's the main reason we're all here right now.
And for that time, obviously, that was visionary, and I believe that she multiplied herself in the role of coach, guardian, because obviously even for the women to travel at that time on their own. So how do you see that as something to carry forward for the next generation? Obviously, we talk about legacy and how do we carry that forward. She sacrificed a lot of her time and efforts for that. So obviously you are the previous generation from the girls that are now. How do you see that responsibility from your end carrying that forward as well?
I think we need to keep closing the gap between generations and having a lot of talks and showing the young players the journey of the people who did what achieved what they achieved before. So to keep it going and not to keep them away from all the squash community, you know, and organize events and talks and maybe play with the juniors and make them more seen so that there's a continuity and make sure that there's generation after generation.
Zina, in terms of sports that are, we are very lucky that squash we have a joint men and women's team since 2015 at the PSA World Tour. You have been the leader of World Squash for over 5 years, and you have led us into the Olympics in the end successfully. How did you get here? How did you get to this point?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I served my apprenticeship in squash because I suppose I started kind of running my squash club at university. I got pulled into doing that and had a role within my local club as chair of squash. I then was heavily involved in university squash, and I got noticed through doing that and got pulled onto the England Squash Board. At the time, led by Jackie Robinson, another female chair. So, and then I succeeded Jackie as chair, as the second female chair of England Squash. So she, to some extent, had been a trailblazer prior to that. But, you know, in England Squash, I was by far the youngest on the board. I was the chair and I was the only female. And that was difficult at times because there were those who made life difficult. And I was fortunate that I did have a male ally, and it's appreciating the fact that I think females have a responsibility to identify talent amongst other females and pull them through the system, give them that opportunity and open doors. But the importance of male allies is also critical, and I suppose I've experienced both of those cases through my career because I've been fortunate enough to have a career in sport, in multi-sport, which has helped my route in coming through squash as a volunteer. And I then got pulled up into European squash as a vice president, and then little did I know that Hugo Hannes at the time was president, and he had a plan that I would succeed him. And there's another male ally, two other male allies who also got me through into European squash, and then you know I had a lot of support then to stand as president of World Squash. So I would say that you know I've not been ambitious for me, and it's never been part. I've never had a plan. I've never had a plan to say that I'm going to go up and ultimately do this. I think it's that other people have identified the fact that I work hard and I understand the sport because I've taken time to understand the sport, and they've opened doors and pulled me through, and other people have pushed me up. So I think that's been really, really important. I feel a responsibility to say I should be doing the same. I should be identifying female talent and making sure that you know that talent is nurtured and that talent is encouraged and nurtured and given that opportunity to then go through other doors. So that's kind of how I've got to where I am really, and I sit here thinking, how did I get here?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all wonder that, like, on ourselves, but it's not an easy journey to get there. And Raneem, I think you were the first person to take Nicole's reign after 8 years to become world #1, and talking about walking on the shoulders of giants. that came about because you also had a generation before you that helped pave the way. I mean, Omneya unfortunately couldn't join us now, but I know that she was a big figure for that. So tell us about your journey to get to world #1 after Nicole reigning for 8 years and how that journey has been.
Well, it's kind of a long journey, but it is very easy to say that it wouldn't have happened without every step and every effort that was put from those who paved the way for me to actually make it there eventually. I was actually there to witness Nicole David become the World Junior Champion, and I was only 12 years old at the World Juniors. We had a coach who saw that I had talent and potential to be good one day, and he decided that he was going to make me part of the team that went, even though I was only 12 years old, to participate under 19. So I saw Nicole winning the World Junior Champions, and from that day I decided that I wanted one day to win the World Juniors. And basically I saw Nicole winning British Junior Open titles, Junior Opens. So I saw Nicole from the very beginning, and I saw her success story, and it was unbelievable. For years we thought it was never going to end, but for years as well I watched so many people come so close, become world #2s for months, for years, and not being able to make it to #1, because Nicole she was that good. Like, she had so many players coming at #2 behind her, and never just getting through, But definitely, to say that I did it on my own is a lie. But basically, what I'm trying to say is that it wasn't just me who was trying to beat Nicole. I've seen so many players try, and I've seen players actually beat her, but never being able to back it up for a full year to actually make it to #1. I've seen Jenny Dunkel beating her a few times per season. I've seen Nathan Granger doing the same, Rachel Burnham. So she was actually very, very strong. You talk to her and she talks about going a full year without losing one match, like it's just having a casual lunch with your friend, So she's a legend, obviously, but I think the time when I actually made it to #1 and managed to push through was a collective effort of like 4 or 5 players, behind Nicole, trying to just get to that spot. I think it was me, Laura, Sherbini, Omneya, Laura, I said Laura already, Alison Waters, Jenny Dunkel. We were all, really trying to beat her time and time again, and eventually to be the one to do it was unexpected, but you could see that it was going to happen soon by one of us, for sure. So yeah, it was a long journey, and definitely, I don't think, because you mentioned Dr. Samiha and you mentioned Engy and Omneya. Dr. Samiha was a very conservative person, by the way. Like, she was very strict. She was very, she had her rules. You would say she was a little bit strict. Because we were very young as well, and she wanted, to make sure that we are on the right track of life according to her vision. So to say that she's that conservative, that strict, but still back in the 90s have the vision and the courage to actually push against boundaries and to actually push for us to make it there is not, it doesn't make sense, but she actually did that. And then, I think I was just thinking about this today, at the age of 14 maybe, I started to play professional sports, like travel to tournaments, which is very young obviously, but my parents couldn't afford to travel with me around the world, so I traveled with my other parents, which were Engy and Omneya, and yeah, they were my mother too. Not that old for sure. They were my sisters.
Older sisters.
Showed me how to do life away from home. But yeah, I wouldn't have done it without them for sure.
I think that's such an important recognition, because really, I mean, we talked about it previously about the top 3 Egyptian women that are now at the top are just absolutely fantastic. But you really open the gateways for all of these women to be able to compete, to travel the world, to be part of the scene internationally, and that really is a true testament for that commitment from your generation. And that, I think, talking about the examples of how you carry on that forward to the next generation. How do you see that with the next generation of players that is happening now? How are you guys connecting your legacy with that generation?
Well, we try as much as possible to give back to the female squash by, till now you find Hania calling Raneem, asking about advice, and Nurshid Bini, and we always text message, the players when they do great and win tournaments, and also they ask about our experiences during our travel and all this, and they were juniors and they saw us come all the way, so they kind of trust us, and even their parents and their coaches, and I think it's our responsibility to give back and to be generous in our information and advice, because we've been through most of it, and we're very genuine about it. I mean, me, Omnea, and Raneem were together for so long as a team. We played Arab games, African games, World Championships, and we know what it's like to be rivals, but at the same time have each other's backs and lift each other up. And this is how you have a bigger base, because the journey on your own is not fun. It's very tough, and I don't think you can play for many, many years without enjoying your journey and having great teammates and people who cheer you on, other than your parents and your coaches, and having a healthy life with a bit of social, part with the people you compete with is very, very important. So I think this is an advice to players, top players now, and I'm sure they're doing it already, to be generous, and it's part of the cycle of life. You work hard, you try to beat the top players, and then one day you're the top player, and then you have juniors coming up, and it's healthy, and they actually push you to be better. So I think Nurshid Bini changed a lot in her game the past few years when Nuran and Hania and all those other players started chasing her fiercely. She had to improve. She had to up her game. So it's only healthy for everyone to keep it going.
Rowena, you are talking about women trailblazers. Maybe if you could give a little bit of a background in terms of how you are actively working to increase funding and sponsorship in female sports, and why that's important, and why it is so important to highlight the leadership and trailblazer females that we have in our sport, to make the most of the momentum that we have as well.
Thanks, Adriana. But before I do that, I just wanted to touch on two of the things that Raneem and Engy mentioned, that in comparison to what Lee said before lunch around squash being a really selfish individual sport, it's really interesting to hear you both talk about sisterhood on the women's side of the game, because I think as women in sport, as women athletes, we have different challenges, and I think that whole sort of unifying piece to talk about allyship. There's male allyship, but there's also female allyship actually, of lifting each other up. And I'm sure, when we come on to talk about your success in 2008, I'm sure a large part of that was the fact that you were together as a group. And that, I think, is just something really to be aware of when you're talking about women versus men in sport, because we do have to think about each other a lot more than others. My story is slightly different to these trailblazers up here. I played a little bit of squash at school, but I was actually a track athlete, and I was a second-generation immigrant growing up in inner city London. I ran for London and for the UK, but I was also very privileged to go to Millfield, which many people will know heralded some squash royalty. But really it was sort of my experience, and then I went on to run for Sri Lanka in Sri Lanka too, so I had this very global view of sport and accessibility. And it was really my experiences as a 17-year-old athlete, running in London, in Millfield, in Sri Lanka, that showed me, or that led me to believe that there was a real need for change. There's a lot of data, but also my own lived experience that showed the dropout of young girls in their teenage years. And I really felt really that this was a real purpose for me, that how can we make it easier, how can we make the path easier for young girls coming through, and this is why it ties in so nicely with the story we're talking about in Egypt. But I talk about women, but it's also underrepresented groups, and I'm a minority woman in the UK, so I'm very passionate about that, but actually women aren't a minority. Women are 50% of the global population, yet we still often put them in the same category as underrepresented groups. So I have this firm belief that a lot of my resilience and confidence came from playing sport, and I firmly believe that if we can increase representation at participation level, and see more people coming up through sport, we will see that much more in leadership as well. And so what am I doing? I originally started life as a commercial sports lawyer, working with international federations, selling sponsorship and broadcasting rights. But actually now I've become sort of a disruptor, trying to disrupt the sports model, whether that's at sort of club, league, international level, but also actually how can we help athletes to come through so that, especially in the space of women's sport, that they can see a career pathway. And I think it's really fantastic to be up here with you both, because you know, that era that we've just talked about, following on from Dr. Samiha to your success in 2008, created a pathway for young women, and in Egypt in particular. And now if we look at the success, the dominance of Egypt on the women's side of the game, that can be tracked back to young girls seeing you all having that success. So I think that, you know, we talked a little bit about the morning, how do you bridge the gap between grassroots and elite? You know, having role models is a really important part, and also having accessible role models, you know, talking about that sisterhood piece, that, you know, that you're not somewhere in the distance, you're actually able to be interactive and supportive as well.
And right now as a sport, we have a big opportunity because there's a lot of interest, commercial interest, in women's sports. Nowadays, women are able to be, we have equal prize money, they're sponsored, there's a lot of opportunities to support women in sports. And I remember actually in 2018, we had the first professional tournament in Saudi Arabia. Raneem, you remember? And it was a very different scope than what it is now. What was that tournament like in 2018?
I mean, like, I think we were kind of in a bubble in Saudi Arabia. We were not in Saudi Arabia out and about, you know, like we were in Saudi Arabia in a bus that was black on the outside, so you couldn't see who was inside, because as women there, you're expected to be wearing a veil all the time. We were not, obviously, so we were in a bubble, shielded, you know, by the outer community. But it was definitely something to be proud of, you know, to be there. For the first time in Saudi Arabia, a women's tournament is happening in any sport. I think it was the first sport ever to host a tournament there. At the time, Saudi Arabia was, you know, like on it, you know, to start breaking the cycle of, you know, being very conservative, of oppressing women over there. We had to be in a building where no guy, boy, any male existed. We had to be in a building just females all around. We were in a, I think it was a sporting hall.
Yeah.
But because sports over there is only practiced by males, the bathrooms that we went in were male bathrooms. And that was, like eye-opening as to how big the event that we are actually being part of was. I remember being there with Kheirallh and Sherbini, and I remember very well because after you guys left, we stayed for a couple of days. We did a tour in Mecca and Medina. And because we were in that bubble, we left that bubble with the same vibe, no veil, nothing. And then we go to the airport, we're checking in to get on the plane, and they're looking at us, and they're like, "You're Muslims, right?" And we're like, "Yeah." "Okay, let me check something." He goes, he comes back. "You're Arabs, right?" "Yes, we are Egyptians." "Let me check something." He did not let us board that plane until we put our veils on. So it was, a bit shocking, but it made sense when once we put that veil on, he let us through. But it made me realize what a bubble we were in. Like we were protected by those organizing the tournament for us, and it was definitely an eye-opening experience.
But that was truly the beginning of, if we hadn't done that and dared to do that, we wouldn't have paved that way. And some of the women that came as well were inspired because other women were coming, and that helped enable that. And I think now with the opportunities that we have, Saudi is probably one of the biggest investors now in female sports. And it's
well, also, if you look at the social change that's happened, a lot of it is because of events like this. Yes, of course, you learn sort of the hard way, you had to face these barriers, but actually that was also showing people within the country that actually Muslim women behave in different ways, and that doesn't make them bad people. But it's that exposure to when you stop being so insular and only thinking about what happens. So that's the power of sport to make change. But I just wanted to sort of touch on one thing around well, first of all, when Adriana first asked me to talk to you about the 2008 World Team Championships, and I was researching it and finding out about the story, I found it incredibly fascinating. And your journey through that process, were you aware at the time of the impact that you were having, and then talking about these cultural parts of it as well, the barriers that you were facing? Obviously you had Dr. Samiha before you. It sounds like she was a very different person to you, and things have changed a lot. But there's just some of those barriers that you faced and overcame, and how the process before and after, just from your perspective.
Well, at the time, we were all surrounded. We were lucky to have parents who were very supportive, and they let us travel the world on our own, and they trusted us and believed in us. And when in Egypt, it's a bit different than Saudi Arabia, even back then. So we were mainly surrounded by people who are like us and have the same way of thinking. So we didn't have this limitation, as what Raneem was talking about. We just wanted to prove that we can win a title like this. We came a very long way as a team, just making it into the quarterfinals, and then losing in the semifinals for a few times, and then reaching the final in Canada 2 years earlier. And we just, on paper, there was just no way we can win this title. But for some reason, we really believed we could, and our coach really believed in us. And I think it was that year, it was a journey of extreme discipline and focus and hard work and support from our family and friends and coaches. We for the first time, we had nutrition. Kheirallh was with us. He was our national team fitness coach, and we worked on our mental side and recovery, and this was something that we never really did And we just really believed that we could do it against all odds. And I remember people, although we made it to the final 2 years earlier, but it was in Canada, so no one really, it didn't leave an impact, although it was a very big achievement. And people just were saying, you know what, maybe if you reach the final or on home soil, that's a great achievement. But I don't think, like winning the event, that was something really, really big. And we were thinking of nothing but to prove them all wrong. And so after that, this is a funny story. So we won, and we were on television in big talk shows, and at our clubs we had big celebrations, and it was a huge thing. But we weren't thinking about coming into the tournament. All we wanted to do was just win that tournament, and that's it. Not thinking of how it will impact other generations or the sport or anything. That was our main goal, to succeed together, and that was our main aim. So after that, it's funny because it was Omneya, the team was Omneya, Raneem, me, and Kheirallh, who is now coaching in the States. And the interviewer asked each one of us, what do you want to see for your sport? So we all say funding, recognition, acknowledgement, like all the orthodox things. And then our number 4, Kheirallh, says, you know what, I want to meet the president. And we're like, sorry, we finished, and we're all like, hey, but are you serious? There's no way we're gonna do that. The next day, we get a call to the federation from the president's office, and they asked to meet us. So it was Hosni Mubarak at the time, may he rest in peace. And so we went there. We were there for 45 minutes, and he was just talking about everything and anything, and we're our jaws dropped, and we come back and we're like, oh, he's the nicest president in the whole world. We were just young. It was a great experience, and
At the time, she didn't meet up with the boys. She had not met with anyone else.
and then we got the highest honorary what's it called?
The
Medal,
Yeah.
and we were the first females to ever get that in sports. So yeah, it was
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
I mean, I've got goosebumps to say that. that's incredible. I mean, you obviously at that point, well, not obviously, did you at that point realise already what an impact that you'd had
After meeting him.
after meeting him? And then I guess since then, from now, when you look at obviously the wealth of talent in Egyptian women's squash in particular, what do you recognise that impact that you had, and what do you think that obviously you had very different challenges and barriers that you had to overcome then. You paved the way for these women coming through. But what do you see a similar? Or is it more pressure? They're standing on the shoulders of giants, but you didn't have that pressure in the same way.
I'm sure they have much more pressure, and now them being number 1 and 2 and 3, everyone is expecting them to win, which is so hard. I remember after winning the World Teams in 2008, we were super excited about it and really happy, but then we had a really bad experience, and so after me winning the decider match and not thinking that it will, that people will talk about it for years after, we lost in the quarterfinal, the next World Teams, and it just hit me so hard. And I just didn't realize that success can, fall apart, and it felt like my all my career just went crumbling down because I was the last match and I lost it 3-2, and but then I couldn't have come through it without my teammates And it's so hard to be number one because people expect you and take it for granted, and it's not easy for them. I think it was harder for us in other ways, but the pressure of being consistent is really hard, and I take my hats off for all three, and all the others as well, for being at the top for so long, and hopefully for so many more years to come.
I mean, there is something called galvanize syndrome, so it's amazing to hear you talk so honestly and vulnerably about your experience, because we don't talk about that with athletes. We just focus on winning at all costs, and then don't think about what that means. When you get there, which was great because you guys were like, we're just going to go for it. We're not putting the pressure on ourselves. But then once you've achieved that, keeping that, then what next? Where do you go from here? It's a thing.
It's even harder to stay up there. So.
But you're so I understand you mentioned this before, that you're how you're sort of continuing Dr. Samina's legacy and keeping that momentum. I understand you coach Noor, is that correct? You coach Noor Al-Tayeb?
Yeah, I coached Noor Al-Tayeb for 2 years after she had her second baby and cooked. So yeah, it was a great experience.
And Raneem, you like also, you're considered to be the mother of all these. I don't know if that's the correct.
Not really, but yeah, I'm really just doing what the generations before me did, like being generous with your advice, helping them out whenever they need help. I keep telling all the girls, my door is always open, like you want to come have some tea, you want to talk, you want to, like, when one of the players has a few tough losses, I like to message, and ask if they're okay, if they need any help. Not to interfere obviously with their team, because everyone has their team these days, and it's kind of, a bit competitive on the coaching side, unfortunately, but yeah, I offer my help if anyone needs it always, and I'm not coaching in the moment, I'm just happily being a mom for now. So yeah, I love the sport so much, and I love squash, and like Engy said, it is a must that we give back, so I see it as the only way to give back, by being there, having the door open for anyone who ever needs help.
I think one of the biggest issues, well, not issues, but I think one of the main things for girls to be inspired is to have people that they can look up to and replicate what they're doing. And obviously from World Squash and from the foundation as well, we are working on programs like the Women in Coaching Fund, which we did the program here. Sadly, Omneya isn't here. She was the first Arab woman to become a tutor. We did that at Black Ball, and that's one of the programs that we're really proud of. We are having more women get certificates as coaches. We did one in Malaysia, we did it in the US, we've done it here. And then also what we have on Wednesday is the Women in Refereeing. So having women coaches, having women referees, having women examples achieve what you have done. Sina, why is that important from a leadership perspective?
I think it's really crucial, because previously we weren't seeing any top women referee, for example, and I think that's critical for young women to see other women play those roles. If you don't see it, you can't be it, and I think that's critical. And the same with coaching. I think we're more likely to get more females coming into coaching if we've got female tutors, and I think it's just particularly in particular nations. I mean, we have still got quite a lot of nations around the world where women need to have, or young girls need to have women coaches. So we need to have more of those, and they're very good at what they do. So yes, so we have been focusing on trying to get more females into refereeing and coaching. To be honest, getting more females into refereeing is much tougher. I think that's a much bigger challenge, because squash is one of the most difficult sports to officiate. it is most difficult. I mean, not only have you got two players on the same side of the court, but actually they're sitting in the middle of the audience, and I think that makes it twice as difficult. So, I think we've got a lot of work to do, and I would say that's not just the responsibility of WSO, but it's also the responsibility of the whole sport, including the players, not to make life any more difficult than is needed on court, because it's an extremely difficult job to do. And I look at kind of Egypt, and they've got a fantastic competition structure. They've got so many juniors. I mean, to have 500 under 11s in your national championship is just mind-boggling. But you can't do that without referees. It needs referees, and I think the whole squash community needs to get behind people and support them as referees. And again, I spoke about leadership positions, but it's the same in refereeing. The reason why Andrea Santa Maria has got to where she is because she's had a huge number, she's had male allies, she's had the doors open for her, she's been given the opportunity, because without that, you're not going to get women coming through. They've got women have a lot more constraints in their lifestyle, they're far less likely to step into that difficult position in the first place. So we have to do everything we can to understand what are those barriers and what do we do to lower those barriers to bring them through. Because, let you take the major games, take Commonwealth Games, Commonwealth Games 2022 in Birmingham, we were required to have 50-50 male-female referees. I mean, we'd struggled because the previous two games had been 18% female, and suddenly we had to get to 50% female. We almost had to go out to nations and say, look, you need to nominate referees, but if you don't nominate any females, forget it, because we're not even going to consider you. And we had to be that harsh, and so some nations didn't have a referee representative, not a male referee at all, because they weren't prepared to put forward a female. So we've really got to be quite harsh in our approach if we're going to change the landscape. So it's coaches and referees and leaders, but referees is particularly critical. And so the workshop on Tuesday and the one we had in Birmingham and the future ones we're having are really very important.
And I think just to bring that back into the leadership point, now we have a female IOC president. Squash is one of the few federations that has a female president. When we talk about the importance of women in these roles, it's to be able to think about challenges and to be able to think like that, because it's a lived experience, and you understand why we haven't got women coming through this. So I think there's the element of everything that you guys have achieved in encouraging women to come into the sport, but then it's also having women at those decision-making positions to understand how we can help the whole ecosystem.
And I think that sometimes that you just have to pick up the phone or you have to have a meeting with someone to really encourage them to step forward into that arena, to have a go, and then support them, because it doesn't happen as easily with females committing themselves. They have so many more responsibilities to start with. And I think it's also the fact that they see, well, why would I want to go there when it's difficult and challenging? So we've got to try and make it an enjoyable social environment for them to be in, not for it to be a struggle and to be hard work. So, there's a lot of changes and a lot of tweaks we need to be making to really make that happen.
And even at the elite level, when you were coaching Noor, and I remember that we had this conversation and as well with Raneem about when she first became a mother, and you had also been through that, and being her coach, you could understand the difficulties of having a young child and having a female that you can talk to and say, I'm going through this as a mother. I don't think that she would have been able to come back to world number 4 necessarily. If I remember that she said that you were so understanding when there were days when she was up and down, and Raneem, you could also, you told me as well, you wouldn't have wanted to do that. I don't think many people would have wanted to do that.
other thing is that I think as females you learn to be resilient, and you know I've been in situations where I've kind of thought, well, I'm going into a meeting and I actually need to put my bulletproof vest on because I'm going to get arrows and bullets and whatever thrown, and not because of anything that I was doing, but I was perceived to be a threat to certain people, and being, you know, and being a female making it a bigger threat, but you know, you learn to become resilient and you learn how to deal with that, but sometimes you do sit there thinking, why am I doing this? And I think females have a much greater tendency to be innately sensible, because it's not about ego or whatever, or about the wanting personally to get to somewhere, it's wanting to make a difference, and you sit there. Females are far more likely to think rationally and say, why would I want to be there? Why would I want to go there? So you've got to make that environment very different. And I think squash, okay, you know, it has its patches and whatever, and the odd individuals, but actually, I think we're quite receptive to gender equality in squash. And I think what PSA has done in terms of gender equality and equal prize money, and I look at world squash and it's far more receptive to females coming through now. We've got far more female national presidents, and you know, Anna is a great example in terms of another female president. And so the world is changing. It's very different from when I was chair of England squash, where it wasn't difficult patch to be, but when I needed help, I knew that Jackie Robinson, who had been there as a president, would come to my support and help. But you know, it's so yeah, I think it's a different world now. It's far more female friendly, far more opportunities arising, but certainly in the international federation landscape, there are still too few of us. I mean, we are a very unusual in terms of a female president. That's something that really does need to change in future.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I think we have about 5 minutes if anyone has any questions. I think we've actually asked a lot of questions, but I think we've gone over time, and I see Omar is already here. Do we have any questions here?
Okay. First, congratulations for Raneem for winning the Hall of Fame yesterday. Back to this picture on 6th of December 2008. So I need to know your feeling before going to the court on each of your matches. This is my first question. The second question for Engy, for your feeling winning the title as a player and as a coach in 2022 with the girls. So this is my two questions for you.
Well, like Engy spoke about the tournament, it was, we had very good vibes going to the tournament. I think the federation had just changed, and we had new members coming in, and in December, that same month, or even I think they joined in October, and the tournament was December 6th in Egypt at the stadium. So the new members of the federation were very excited, and they were, you know, working very hard to make sure we had everything that we wanted, and they were making sure we were not, you know, missing anything that would hinder our success in this tournament. Like Engy said, we had everything at the palm of our hand. We had a great squash coach in Mohammed Midhat, a great fitness coach in Ahmed Faradallah, a great nutrition coach and a great physio, you know, in Dr. Hani Wamba and Ahmed Ghanem at the time. So we had a full team for the first time ever, you know, helping us do everything. I remember we were very tense before the final match. It was, you know, we were going up against England, who had won so many times before that, and who were expected to win. We played against Laura, Alison, and Jane Uphill, who, looking back, had great journeys in squash, and they had a huge impact on the sport. So it was a very strong team to come up against, and we were not as highly ranked as they were. But we knew that on a good day, each one of us could actually win the match. And I think it was a good vibe all around. And we were very stressed. I remember I lost 3-2 very close out, and I was so sad that I couldn't bring the win home. But luckily, Engy had the fire and the resistance, the resilience that you spoke about, to win a very, very, very tough match that was very exciting to watch, and I think, yeah, it was a great vibe. Looking back, we had the best memories ever. Now to your success as a coach.
I must say that in that final match, I lost the first game in like 3 minutes. And then I came off court, and usually you see the coaching between games, especially in teams event. But then just pointing out our bond, I had Raneem and Kheirallh sitting next to Mohammed Medhat and talking to me and making me feel, trying to make me feel more comfortable. And I can tell that something was going wrong, and they were trying to help Mohammed regulate my feelings. So without them, I couldn't have done it. And actually, they are the reason why I pushed hard and just so that we succeed together. So thank you for being there. And okay, so back to your question. It was a great thing winning that tournament in 2008. As I told you, we came a very, very long way. We climbed the ladder together, and it was very hard. So it was a great feeling. That tournament in 2022, dealing with a team of all females for the very first time. So there was Nuran Gohar, Noura Shirbini, Haria Hamami, and Noura Qaib, and Amna Tarabulsi was with us. So we were all females. As fun as it may sound, it's still hard to be around all females because you keep questioning everything you say in your head and thinking, well, how did she take this comment? What am I supposed to say? How will she take? Should I push? Should I take it easy? But and then having 3 or 4 really, really great players and legends all in one team was very hard. Each one has a different character. I remember calling Raneem every day and taking her opinion because she traveled with them more and trying to understand each one's character and how to find a way to talk to them because I would only spend time with them like maybe a month before the tournament. So I had to try and understand how each one thinks and what they're expecting. But it was great. I was doubting myself and I was nervous, although you had top players in one team. What if something goes wrong? So you're expected to win, and it was really hard. And it was my first time as a coach, and it was the first time for a female to coach a team like this. So I had so much pressure on my shoulders. I'm good at not showing it, but deep inside it was very hard and such a relief when we won it. And it was great, getting too close to those stars, each one in a different way. They're both great.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've spoken a lot about how the wonderful strides that squash has made in sort of gender equality. I wonder what you hope that other sports could learn from the way that squash has had great success, and then also what is next for sort of women's squash? How do we see it improving? Because as far as we've come, there are obviously still some issues in the way that women are treated compared to men.
I think that's a really interesting question. I was at an event in Birmingham about women's sport about 2 or 3 months ago, and they were talking about women's football, women's rugby, women's cricket, and the strides that they've made in terms of equality, but they've still got a long, long way to go in that respect. I mean, huge strides, but then they needed to make huge strides. And I sat there and reflected on squash, and I'm thinking, I've never thought about it, but actually, terms of the PSA Tour, in terms of equal prize money, equal tournaments. We've just combined men's and women's World Championships together, but how many sports actually do that? Bring both the men's and the women's together such that they're equal. A policy of equal media cover for males and females. I mean, we are strides ahead compared with many sports, and you know, I would really applaud the PSA for what they have done in recent years towards that, and also, you know, we followed with World Squash in terms of really restructuring our World Championships to ensure that we've got equality. World Juniors, we brought you know, the men's and women's teams, junior teams together, and they're loving that. Men's and women's championships, senior championships, they just love being together, and that's. So I think we've got a lot of work to do, and I think we will have for quite a long time. And now World Squash has created, and the board's just approved a Gender Equality Diversity Commission, which, you know, has got PSA representation and World Squash representation on it. So we've got another action plan and checklist to make sure that where we have got gaps, we continue to work really hard at that. But I think we should sometimes sit back and actually reflect and applaud where squash sits and strides it has already made.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just want to add one thing, because you do talk about women's football and women's rugby, and you know, I mentioned women's squash there, but we never say men's and women's squash, we just say squash, you know, and that's so unique from a sports perspective. And I mentioned, you know, I was an athlete, I worked in athletics for a long time, which is arguably a gender neutral sport, but actually there was in so many ways it wasn't, and unless you're really sort of in it, you don't realise the massive, we didn't have equal prize money for a long time. So a lot of the thing, and honestly this is why I came into work into squash, because I actually saw it as a trailblazer. I saw it as a sport that lots of others could learn from. I saw the growth of squash in Egypt as incredible, and actually a blueprint for other countries to grow sports. So I think there's so much that other sports can learn from, and to sort of take it back to our conversation this morning about what it means to be part of the Olympic family. You know, actually they're getting a massive advantage now as well, because they're getting a lot of learnings that perhaps there wasn't that level of interaction before between sports, but now there's so much as an Olympic family. I think actually we have this opportunity to also tell our story, but I go back to the fact that we started, we had a head start on that equality narrative, and now, you know, with Zena and that role, with focused leadership on the equality point, we're just miles ahead of so many other sports, and really we need to all be out there telling that story.
Right. Well, I just really want to say thank you. Thank you so much for your time, for your generosity, for being here. We really, truly, as a sport, we're very lucky to have people like yourselves to share your knowledge and to share the time with us and share your stories and inspire others. It's rare to have such kind people as well. So thank you for being here and for keep inspiring more and more people to play and to coach and to lead. So thank you. Thanks for your time.